What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of A Thinking Man's Podcast. I'm your host. My name is Joseph PIRCHER. With me, as always, my good friend Tommy Styles. And joining us today is a friend of the show, Gabe Rocha. Gabe is a unique guest. So, Gabe is a cognitive performance specialist. He has a master's degree in sport and performance psychology. And so, Gabe works on both psychology and cognitive performance training with the Air Force fighter pilots and their instructor pilots. So, Gabe, firstly, welcome to the show. Thanks for making time for us. And tell us a little bit about this, man. Tell us a little bit about what you went through in school, to earn that higher education, and then give us a little bit of the background here, like with what you're dealing with, because I'd imagine, I know nothing about it, but I'd imagine the stuff that you're seeing and the stuff that you're helping people deal with is like some of the highest stress environments that the human brain can possibly go through. So, tell us a little bit about all that.
Yeah, guys. So first off, thanks for having me on. Super big privilege to be on here. In terms of like the educational background, I got my undergrad degree just in basic psychology. So born and raised in LA, I went to Cal State Long Beach, Santa Monica College for a few years first to start getting all of the prereqs out of the way. Graduated from Cal State Long Beach with a degree in psychology, and then from there ended up going to Cal Baptist University out in Riverside for my master's in sport and performance psychology. Cal Baptist was really cool. It's a much more of an applied program. So while I was there, I got to work with a ton of D1 college athletes, D2, D3 college athletes, some high school athletes as well. So that was a really cool experience just working with some of the teams that were on campus. So like men's water polo, the women's dance team, just to name a few. But that was kind of how I got started and everything. And then from a professional standpoint, once I graduated from there, unfortunately, that was during COVID when I was going through my master's program. So all the sports ended up getting shut down in March of 2020. And then I graduated in September of 2020. So I was right halfway through my degree. And I was like, well, I still want to do something with this degree. I still love sports psychology. Unfortunately, a lot of the universities and stuff weren't hiring. That was my main goal, was to go like the D1 route and then try to go up to the professional level. But I found that the military was hiring for cognitive performance. So I started working as a contractor for the Army as a resilience trainer over at Fort Polk in Louisiana, and was there for a little under a year, and then ended up bouncing over to Columbus, Mississippi to work with the Air Force. Was there for about a year and a half, and then I just transferred over to San Antonio, and been working with Air Force fighter pilots and instructor pilots now for, in total, a little over 2.5 years.
Okay. And so you were telling us a little bit off air. I want to dive into some of the stuff we were talking about. So the previous location in Mississippi, that was almost, now correct me if I'm wrong, and if I don't mean to get this wrong, but almost more of like where you were meeting the pilots in their kind of entry level. And then so would you say now being in San Antonio, that's almost like a level up where you're dealing with the pilots as they are in a more stressful and like extensive part of the training, right?
Yeah. So back when I was in Columbus, it's UPT, so it's short for undergraduate pilot training. And so when pilots are going through there, they're barely earning their wings from the Air Force, right? So they're
Okay.
figuring out how to fly. A lot of them have at most like 15 to 20 hours of flight experience. They're coming
Oh
straight out
wow.
of the Air Force Academy. And that flight experience is in the DA-20, which is like basically a glider.
Okay.
A lot of the pilots, when I talk to them about it, they're like, yeah, it's basically like a lawnmower with some wings attached to it. That's how basic that aircraft is. And then by the time they get to UPT and they start learning, they're flying a T6, and that's like a really high performance uh turboprop jet. And so it's essentially, you go from riding like a little tricycle to they hand you the keys to like a sports car.
Yeah.
And then here in San Antonio, I'm working with instructors. So some of them, they just finished up that undergraduate pipeline. And so they've got their wings. their first assignment, they're called FAPEs, FAIP, so first assignment instructor pilot. So some of them are coming straight out of that pipeline and they're going to come train here, learn how to be an instructor in my squadron, and then they end up going back to their base for their first assignment. And then a lot of them are coming from other airframes within the Air Force, and they're either they choose to come back and be an instructor or they get selected to come back and be an instructor. So they come through my squadron there, go through the instructor training to become a better instructor, and then they go off to another base.
Side note, I'm just kind of putting this all together. Is this how you met Kyrie?
No, I actually met him at the Muscle Factory here.
Oh, no
I was
shit. Okay. Okay.
yeah, I was on the pendulum squat one day. I was about to get upset, and he was on the Smith machine standing right in front of me. And I was like, "Hey, man, you mind giving me a spot?" He's like, "Yeah, sure. Like, how many reps do you want?" And I was like, "Just until I fail." And he was like,
Yeah.
"All right, cool." So he spots me, and I end up going all the way to failure. I think I got like one or two more reps after, like with the spot. And he was just like, he's like, "That's a good set." He was like, "We should train legs together sometime." And I was like, "All right, let's do it."
Wow, that's like the ultimate compliment after a set. Like, man, that was serious. You can come train with me.
Yeah.
And that's IFBB Pro Kyrie Cooper, Classic Pro. We just had him on for the audience. We just had him on a couple of weeks ago. So if you didn't check that out, make sure to go check that out. But shout out to Kyrie because he mentioned you during that episode, and that's kind of that's was my first exposure to you. That my ears perked up when he had mentioned, yeah, the guy I train with is a sports psychologist. Because then in my mind, I'm like, man, is he just like talking you through every set and like, like getting you prepared for every set? He said it's not exactly that. It's he kind of lets you do your job outside of the gym, but yeah. So going back to what you do, kind of give the audience an idea of why these guys, as they go through this training, like how, like try to give the audience an idea of how high pressure and high stress it is. Like, why do they need to talk or get assistance from someone like you? And then that will kind of lead us into some of the some of the tools and things that you are able to provide them. But give us an idea, like you had talked earlier about, like, the force and the G's and all this stuff. Like, what's a typical training session or fight like for these guys?
Yeah, so I mean, depending on the population I'm working with, so for my instructors, specifically in my squadron, a lot of it really comes down to what are best practices for instruction. So like when you're sitting down with a student, I'll sit with them in their briefs and their debriefs and figure out like how are you giving effective feedback to these students, right? Are you giving effective feedback to them here on the ground? And then talking through some of the strategies on how they give feedback when they're in the cockpit. Like you talked about, it's a very stressful environment when they're up there in the air. There are a lot of different things that they're trying to bounce their attention back and forth to. Um, all of their sorties, which are their flights, it's just another name for their flights. Every time they go up and fly, they're being graded, right? And so you can easily fail a ride, which we call hooking a ride. You can easily hook a ride for something minor, like if you leave your gear down, like your landing gear down after you take off after a certain like certain parameters, it's like cool, you failed the ride, and then you still have to go and do the entire flight anyways, knowing that you just failed the ride. So it's like, how quickly are you able to bounce back from that and stay resilient in the moment, knowing that, hey, I automatically failed the ride, but I still have to go perform. So a lot of it just comes down to managing your attention. It's very easy to become cognitively overloaded in the moment. So it's when you get bogged down by too many different stimuli that are coming in, or you make a mistake, how, like, are you someone who spirals? If you are, what are the strategies that you have to get out of that spiral and then be able to stay back ahead of the jet and make the correct decisions? Because the plane's not stopping. You're still up there in the air. You still have to live within the certain parameters.
Are you debriefing with these guys at all after the flight and assessing their psyches after, say, like one of them fails? Are you talking after the flight's over too at all?
Yeah, for the ones who seek it out, yes. I'm not the one who's like pushing for them and saying like, hey, like how you feeling after the flight? Like I'll ask that question generally speaking. And then it's up to them, like if they really want to get in depth with it. If they do want to get in depth, I'll be like, hey, let's go sit in my office and talk about this more. So I definitely do have some of those pilots that'll come sit with me and they're talking about like, hey, like I hooked a ride, or I'm really struggling with this and this and this, and managing these types of expectations, or I'm not getting enough sleep. Do you have any sleep tips for me? I'm not studying effectively enough. What can I do to get better at these things? But when I'm sitting in the debriefs, it's more for the instructional style and seeing like, are you giving effective feedback? Are you asking effective questions to guide the student to the answer, or are you giving the students the answer and not allowing them to kind of go through their own learning process?
What are those conversations like though? Like, let's say someone does hook a ride, or they're just struggling with performance, like in the air. Um, they're overwhelmed, whatever the case is. Like, do you have some go-to cues or tools that you provide them with? Like, well, what is the most common limiting factor or problem that someone that wants to come have a one-on-one with you in their office, what do you see? Like, is it just overload? Is it just too much going on at once?
Man, it's a multitude of different ones. Like I've heard a ton of different things. For some people, it's literally just like, hey, I didn't sleep well last night, and so like I'm really
Yeah.
fatigued, or I haven't slept well in a week. And so it's like
Yeah.
that fatigue builds up. I mean, as bodybuilders, you guys know how quickly fatigue builds up. And then for them, they're up there experiencing G's. And so it's like on a physical level, they're physically fatigued. The amount of information they're being forced to learn causes that mental fatigue. So for some, it might be something as simple as like hydration, not getting enough sleep. Sometimes they just like forget certain information that they normally wouldn't forget because their mind is thinking about some mistake they made earlier in the flight. And maybe it's not a mistake that they made that they would hook for. So it's just something like, you get knocked down a point here and there for something like that. But if you're not able to effectively move past that, and then you let that continue to creep in and be at the forefront of your attention when you're on an approach back to your airport, and then you miss certain parameters, or you're off speed, you're off altitude, and then it becomes a safety of flight issue, then it's because you're not prioritizing that information correctly. So some of the times it comes down to just like, hey, having an effective cue when you have that self-awareness that, hey, I'm starting to spiral, or my attention is not where it needs to be. Like, do I have a certain cue word or cue phrase that I can use that essentially tells me like, hey, snap back, point the attention back to where it needs to be.
What's an example of one?
One of the ones that I've actually used recently, I had a pilot who was struggling in formation. And essentially with in formation, you're flying 10 feet apart, wing to wing from another aircraft. And while you're flying 10 feet apart, you're also doing like maneuvers. So it's like you're turning together and like you're doing loops and flips, and you have to stay within that 10 feet. That pilot, she was having issues with it. And so what happened was she would become very, very stressed out, like physically stressed, very mentally stressed. And so one of the keywords that we came up with, which was actually a cue that I stole from one of my mentors, was one of her old pilots. When he would make a mistake, he would say, "Talk to me, Goose," like in Top Gun. Right. So that would be his verbal cue that he would say to himself to kind of reset. So it'd be like, "Talk to me, Goose." And that would remind him, all right, let's take a deep breath. All right, let's get our altitude back where we need it to be. Let's get our airspeed back where we need it to be. Let's get all these things back prioritized in the correct order, and then we can go and start making our next decisions.
So it could be anything. It could be anything personal. It's more so just a reminder to get back to square one and not let this get worse.
Huh. Exactly.
That's interesting. Oh, go ahead, Tommy. Sorry.
Oh no, that reminded me, just a segue. I just saw a little reel by Eddie Hall, because he worked with it was either a hypnotist or a sports psychologist, somewhere in that line. When he pulled his world record lift, he kept missing it, and they said it's because the human body isn't designed to make this lift. So you have to get yourself into almost like a existential, like psychotic place. Yeah. So they created it was like a snap of a band on his arm. Yep. And that cue put him in a place of where he thought he was lifting a car off of his kids. And that's what it enabled him to get the lift.
Yeah. And I mean, as bodybuilders, like I'm sure you guys have probably done something similar to that in the past, where it's like leading up to your top set of squats or deadlifts or hack squats. It's like I'm thinking about something that's going to put me in like the mental state, the physiological state to be able to move this weight as many times as I need to do it. That state is not typically one where, like we're just sitting here having a conversation. It's much more amped up.
Yeah, you can't hang out there too long. You'd be
No, you
you'd be
can't.
doing some terrible things out in the wild. Um, no, but it's interesting to me though, because you had mentioned too that you did work with tons of actual athletes like while you were doing school too. Um, and so I'm curious, like, what did you see there? What was it like, were there common like limiting like beliefs or thoughts that you found that athletes have? Like, I'm curious with that. Obviously all three of us are bodybuilders, and so um not to like publicly spill the beans, but Tommy had the great idea. Even he had talked about, possibly bringing someone in like you into his kind of camp during contest prep. And it's just such a killer idea because, you know, all three of us know, like with bodybuilding, man, like there's not many other things that it all happens in your mind more so than anywhere else. And you're just living in it all day. So I'm curious, like what you saw from other high level athletes, like, whether there was like common limiting beliefs, and then what you could do from your role to kind of help keep those at bay.
Yeah, I mean, some of the ones that kind of stick out when I was going through my grad program, I got to work with the women's golf team at Cal Baptist University, and
Oh man, such a mental game.
exactly, right. Um, and like it's so easy to get thrown off in a sport like golf because I get one shot
One shot.
and then I get minutes to think about that shot before
Yeah.
I can walk up to my ball again because now it's 150, 200, 250 yards down the fairway. Hopefully it's on the fairway. Hopefully it's not over in the
Right.
grass or it's not in the water.
That one shot might ruin an entire round. Like you might have a killer day and then you have one shot and it ruins it.
Yeah. And so actually one of the things I did with one of the golfers that I worked with, similar to Eddie Hall, is she would have like a hairband, right? So whenever she'd hit a bad shot and she'd notice she'd start spiraling, she would snap the hairband on her wrist as well. And that would be that signifier, like, hey, I'm going down a bad path right now. I know these thoughts are not going to be conducive to my performance. I need to focus on lining up the next shot to put myself in the best position, right? So having that was really cool experience. I worked with like international students as well who were here on scholarship. Um, that one is a little bit trickier because now they're coming from overseas to play here. They're on scholarship, and so the pressure for them feels different, right? Because it's now they're in a whole different country. They don't have any family nearby. Some of them don't speak the language super well, so there's that communication barrier. And then they feel like, oh, at any given moment, if I play a bad tournament, now I'm going to lose my scholarship, right? So
Right.
now the pressure feels even higher for them. So working with them, like those self-limiting beliefs of, oh, I'm going to lose my scholarship if I have a bad tournament, right? It's like, how do we work through those in a productive way that you're still able to perform despite the fact that you have put some of this pressure on yourself?
Man, that's
Was there any
crazy to think about. Sorry, Tommy. I was just going to say that's crazy to think about because that is almost like not only are they going to like I could see them almost feeling pressure to a level where it's like I'm going to lose my spot here in this country if I don't play well.
yeah.
Go ahead, buddy.
Was there anybody you were exposed to that you were almost like blown away by how exceptional their mental strength was? Any
Good
athletes?
question.
Oh yeah. So like I said, I was born and raised in LA. So being a kid growing up, I watched the Lakers three-peat in the early 2000s. So for me, Kobe Bryant's my guy. Like I grew up, he's my hero. So seeing him, he's a big reason why I even got into the field. So my junior year of high school, I played football in a second round of our playoff game. I got my ankle rolled over. And so ended up cutting my season. We ended up losing the game. During that off season, I read Tim Grover's book, Relentless. And I read that book in a day, which is not like a crazy feat. Like it's a super easy read. I think it's only like 150 pages or something like that. But when I read that book, like I didn't even know I wanted to go into the field of psychology yet. And like I read one book and I was like, this is what I want to do. And then that entire off season, going from my junior year to my senior year, I put on 40 pounds. I went from like fighting for a starting spot to being a team captain, getting like all league honors, et cetera, et cetera. And like I noticed the mental shift. That was the first time in my life I had ever been extremely focused on something like to a level that I didn't even know existed. And I was like, if I can do it, I know I can help other people do it as well. And that's what really got me into the field. So people like Kobe, Michael, Messi, all those athletes like growing up.
Turned yourself into a cleaner in one off season.
Exactly.
All right. So now hearing all this, man, I just feel like there's no way Kyrie is too smart not to come to you once in a while. I mean, like he's a professional athlete, and especially like, coming out of the year that he just had, we talked about it with him where, yes, like, the positive spin on it is like, pressure is a privilege. It's a huge honor to have, some of the feedback that he got pro debut. He's right up there with some of the biggest names in the sport. The head judge is telling him like, hey, in a couple of years, if this the whole thing isn't yours, like you fucked it up. That's obviously incredible, but also that's a huge amount of pressure because now it's like the top of the mountain is the only acceptable outcome. So, you obviously those conversations are personal, but from your perspective, has there, like, how interesting has it been, being so close? Like, this is what you do, and then by chance, you end up being training partners with like super high level professional athlete. Like, what has that been like for you?
Yeah, man, it's been amazing. I will say that I've been very lucky throughout my life. Like since I got into bodybuilding, I started going to Gold's Gym in Venice back in 2015 when it was still like a pretty good gym to go to for bodybuilding. So that's kind of where I learned how to train hard. I was surrounded by like Sean Roden while he was the reigning Olympia champ in 2018, 2019. Dexter
Dexter is
Jackson.
probably out there. Yeah.
Dexter was there. I used to see him all the time. So I've been really lucky to see that at a really close level. And then now being able to train with someone like Kyrie, to me, it is such a privilege, right? Because he gets it, and we both approach training the same way, which I feel like at this point is not really common because we're both like very low volume, high intensity kind of guys. And he's just like it's very easy to train with. Like we've had sessions where it's like we don't really even say a word to each other until we're on like our fourth exercise. Yeah. Like we give each other like a nod or like this is our universal hand motion for it's time for our
let's go.
Yeah. We don't even say a word. Training with him is really, really cool because for me it's obviously like I'm an amateur. Like I haven't even done a show in the NPC yet. I did a show a few years back. And so kind of like when I'm training with him, my goal is I'm going to get this guy to the Olympia. Like I'm going to make sure it's there.
Yeah.
And so approaching it with that mindset also just brings the intensity out of me because I'm always trying to close that gap. And it's like I see how hard he trains and I'm just like, well, guess what? You got 2 more reps. We're going to go get 2 more reps. And he doesn't let me off the hook at all either, which is one thing that I really appreciate. And that's one thing I told him early on. I was like, hey, if you ever catch me slacking off like consistently, like call me out on it. And if I don't change, like I'm not going to be butthurt if you say, hey, we can't train together anymore. And he's like, and he's very receptive to that feedback too. Like if I tell him, hey, you're kind of dragging ass today, which very, very rare occurrence. Or if I can see like his mood is a little funny or whatever, I can call him out on it and he'll be like, all right, cool. Let me go take a lap around the gym, give me a couple minutes, take a few deep breaths. He comes back and locks right in. And so like he gets it from the mental front already. Like this is why he said like I don't do any of like the mental performance coaching stuff with him because he's already so locked in. Like he understands his own mind to a very high level and what makes him click.
Well, the effort in a bodybuilding training session, it's not going to be all the way there if your mind's elsewhere. I've learned that a lot myself over the years. I've learned it with training partners. I especially learned it from, I think Dusty's probably who instilled it in me. just because that was like the strongest mind that I'd ever been able to see with my own eyes. Like, could go from telling a joke, laughing, having a good time to just straight faced and pulling, 600 for reps, like snap of a finger. And then as soon as he dropped the weight, go back to joking. Like, it was just very, very selective intensity of when he needed it. So it was almost like a reservoir that he had of all that, and he used it when he needed, but he didn't walk around the whole session like that.
Yeah, and I think that is a really cool skill to have, because there are definitely sessions where Kyrie and I are like that too, or some sessions it's like we walk in there, like we both know, like, hey, we're not going to be talking very much this session, right?
Yeah.
And intensity's there. And there's other sessions where it's like we're kind of messing around in between sets, but then we both know, like, all right, cool, put my headphones on, I'm going to take my 3 or 4 deep breaths, I'm going to go strap into the seat or grab onto the handles, and it's go time. It kind of reminds me of like Luke Sando. I know he used to be that way as well. Like when you hear James talk about like some of the sessions they had together, and Ben, and they were just like, yeah, like Luke, he could just like make jokes, and then 10 seconds later, like he's under 400 pounds on an incline press and he's hitting it for reps.
Man, Tommy, I've heard you describe that a couple times about like training with Dusty, and you see it too. Like you hear him on the podcast with Ron talk about it, where he's kind of this like happy-go-lucky, like pretty jovial dude. But then it's like I always come back to like the Kai Green quote or sentiment where it's like, man, like to do the shit that he has done, like there's a scary motherfucker in there somewhere. There's like a bad motherfucker in there somewhere. And it's honestly just crazy to me. Like I don't have that skill. Like I need to turn it on when I get to the gym. And then I've described it almost like I need a black cloud to follow me around the whole session for me to keep it on. Have you, this is more for Tom, I'm almost interviewing Tommy now, but did you pick that up from him at all?
Yeah, because I was
like
like
you have
that.
consistent training partners. Like are you able to kind of shoot the shit a little bit and then let it rip?
Yeah, I prefer that because it helps me not burn out too quick. I was like that when I trained alone. And I still can get that way if I train alone, where I might really use rage as like because my music choice is not like happy. Like it's
Right.
99, 2000 Eminem, old school hip hop. It bangs. So I in turn go hard because of that. But with Dusty, and he'll tell you, he actually got rid of a training partner once because they were too like in the void full time, and it was like a cloud around him. So I had no choice but to like turn it on for the sets and then calm down in between sets. And it actually showed me that like I'm better this way if I just learn to tap into it when I need to. And then that's how my training partners and I work now is we're a lot like you, Gabe. Like there isn't much talking for about the first hour while we're there. I don't care how you like, I'm not going to ask how you're doing. What's up? How was your night? I don't care. They don't care about me. It's fine. But like usually by the first top set of the first real exercise, it's, we start talking shit to each other and getting everybody ready. And then there's usually like 3 or 4 movements every workout that require that. And then everything like, a cable lateral or some tricep work. No one needs to be in the void for that stuff. So we're kind of like, I guess we let off the gas, but we still get the job done. But it is very laid back, except when it doesn't need to be. And then it's like those guys both use music, so they put headphones on. I don't like things in my ears because it throws off my balance for some reason. So I just go straight. I can tune out sound really well when I'm training.
Just raw dogging it, huh? You're a different breed, buddy. Man, okay, but so back to you, Gabe. So, you're like you said, you're training with Kyrie, you're pursuing bodybuilding yourself. You've been working with Justin Shier as a coach.
Yes,
Cool.
sir.
How's that been? What's he like?
It's amazing. I found Justin through through Fuad's podcasts back before, like I think it was like before he turned pro, because I hired him like a month or 2 after he turned pro. I think he turned pro at the 2021 Nationals in December, if I'm not mistaken, and then I hired him like February.
Okay.
of 2022. But it's been great. The reason why, or multiple reasons why I picked him is once I figured out like what his approach was to bodybuilding. Like first off, he's just a really personable guy. Like he's super cool, super funny. It's like we're at the point now where we have that relationship where I still have that full level of like respect and reverence and like I don't want to mess up. Like this is my coach. I have him on this pedestal way above me, but like we can still joke around here and there, which I think is really cool. So it's not like a buddy friendship, but it is definitely it's still like that like coach client relationship with some jokes mixed in. So he's really personable, super easy to get along with. Very similar approach to training. He's obviously like low volume, super controlled, high effort kind of guy. Part of the reason I also hired him as well is because he's coached by Matt Jansen, and I was like, well, I can't afford Matt Jansen, obviously, and so I was like, I'm gonna get some trickle down Matt Jansen knowledge through Justin because Justin's a smart guy, and I know that he knows his stuff.
Yeah.
But in terms of like X's and O's, like I mean, everything makes sense. Whenever he makes changes to the plan, he always gives me good reasoning for it. Some of the stuff that's more obvious, he won't give me a reasoning for. Like, hey, we're gonna pull some carbs out of like this meal here. It's like, okay, yeah, I know we're cutting right now, so it's like I don't have to ask
Right.
questions.
Yeah.
But in terms of like training, execution, exercise selection, like he gets it. And so it's like having someone who's extremely competent, super easy to talk to has just been awesome to work with.
That's cool. Yeah, I can't even say I'm surprised. Like, he was on that podcast for so long, and he's on other podcasts and puts out a lot of content where it seems like he's one of these guys where what you see is what you get. Like he it seems like he would be no different than. I mean, like when all of us that are putting content out. I mean, Tommy have done this basically every week for 2 years. Like I've gotten those comments where I talk to someone outside of the show and they're like, or you meet somebody at the Olympia or something, and they're like, man, you're just like you are on the show. And it's like it'd be tough to fake it at this point. Like
Yeah.
I would deserve a fucking Oscar at this point if I was faking it 2 years into it. But yeah, I mean, I think he's a guy that I think Tommy and I probably both look at and agree with a lot of the same stuff. We probably um do a lot of similar stuff with our own training, with our clients. Kind of all those guys are kind of cut from a similar cloth. So it when I heard that, I was like, yeah, that makes sense. Like after knowing how you guys trained and um, seeing how well spoken you are and how smart of a guy you are, it makes sense that you would want one of those guys that like has a reason for everything, could tell you the why behind everything. There's too many good coaches that offer that now to just be told what to do without ever being told why or getting any type of rationale. Um, Now, with your own bodybuilding, have you? I mean, I guess it would be silly to ask or say that you haven't used any of it, but how would you say like your background academically, professionally, have you carried that over to bodybuilding? Like how much do you feel like it's paid off for you compared to someone that doesn't have that background, maybe didn't have people that were tough or mentally tough or doing hard things around them? Like how do you feel like that has paid off for you? Do you feel like you had like almost like a mental head start?
Yeah, and in some ways I do.
Hack.
What was that?
Oh, go ahead. I said you have a hack. You have the
Oh,
hack that most
yeah.
guys don't get.
Yeah. In some ways I definitely feel like I do, just kind of understanding like the importance of the mental game that goes into bodybuilding. Because I feel like a lot of people, they just kind of see it as like, yeah, I can just kind of grit and grunt my way through every workout. And it's just like, dude, it's a lot more than that. It's like, how does motivation play into this? How much are you leaning on things like discipline? Like, yeah, there are some days where it's like you can lean on motivation, and that's going to be like super cool. Like on those days when you're just like, yeah, I'm ready to go kill it in the gym. And there's other days where you're just like, dude, I don't want to eat this chicken. I don't want to eat this rice, and I don't want to eat these green beans. And you're just like, well, at the end of the day, guess what? Like, I have a goal. And it's just like, how do you reframe your perspective around that? Like, I've heard Tommy talk about it. It's like, yeah, dude, you get to like your sixth meal and you're making it and you're just like dreading eating that meal. And it's like, I've been there at the peak of my off season when I got up to like 235, 240 pounds, which was like by far the biggest I'd ever gotten to. And it's like you're warming up that meal. It's just like it's all going to pay off. It's like you wake up that next morning and you feel all fat and bloated, and like your mindset's just like, dude, I'm never going to be a good bodybuilder. It's like, okay, how quickly am I able to shut that off? It's like, okay, I teach people how to do this for a living. I sure hope I can do this on my own. Um, I think the biggest place that I get value from it though is definitely like within the training and like the approach to training. Cause like there's some days where it's like you just don't, it's not there. You just don't have it, right? Like you're not going to progress everything every single session. And like, are you still able to walk out of that session feeling like it was a successful session? Like, are you still moving closer? A lot of people can't reframe that perspective, right? And then also just knowing what makes me tick. And so it's like I can flip that switch when I'm getting ready for that top set. I can flip that switch even on a back off set if I'm trying to take it all the way to hell and back, which I mean, as you guys know, like it is a skill. A lot of people they get into those sets and the set starts getting hard and they kind of start to panic and they start rushing through the reps and the execution starts to fall off and it's like training through that skill of like not panicking at the top end of your top set and when things are really starting to hurt and your whole body is telling you shut it down, re-rack it and all that stuff. So it's been very valuable to me in being able to like use it towards my own bodybuilding.
So what makes you tick then?
Oh,
What is
man.
yours? What is your switch?
For me, it is especially right now. So like I kind of talked about it already with being Kyrie's training partner. I don't know how far I'm ever going to get in bodybuilding in terms of like getting a pro card or like ever being like competitive on a pro level stage. Like I genuinely love it. For me, the one thing that I want people to remember me by is like that dude could train. And so it's like that's
Yeah.
where I take all the pride. And so it's like when I go into that training session with someone, it's like, yeah, I might not ever get a pro card. I might not ever win a pro show. I might not ever get to the Olympia, and that's totally fine. But when we're sitting around like 20 years from now and like we're talking about our bodybuilding careers, hopefully they're gonna remember me and be like, damn, he was the best training partner. Like he was always super engaged in the training. He always trained hard. He always took his set there. And that allowed me to be a better bodybuilder as well. So that's part of it. I lean on JP a lot. Jordan Peters, it's like Justin Shier and Jordan Peters are like my two gods in
Okay.
bodybuilding. So it's like anytime I see him post a video, I'm just like that's it. Especially seeing like you guys kind of talked about like the void, like going to that dark place. It's like I feel like if anybody's got it mastered, it's that guy. It's like he goes to some wicked places. Um, so yeah, that's kind of what makes me tick. It's like how can I unlock that level of intensity that like JP unlocks and then put that towards my training?
Well, that level of discipline too, because if there's one clip that I hope the bodybuilding audience takes from this podcast is what you just said there about what makes you tick and what you want to be remembered for, because pursuing that will still get you as far as you're ever going to go towards getting your pro card or however far you're supposed to go genetically with those limitations. You're still going to reach that point with that mindset. And I think, Joe and I work with a lot of younger guys, especially, and 9 out of 10 come to us with like mentioning the pro card right away before they've even learned what you just said, where it's like, and that's how I was too. I wanted to earn respect from my peers. I didn't think about a pro card for the first 7 or 8 years I did this at all. Like I just wanted to keep every show I did was my version of my Olympia, and that was it. And I think that mentality is what even keeps you in the game long enough to see what you're even working with to go attempt a pro card or for a pro card. I think Turner Riddle, when I think of guys who like Turner's got a reputation, he trains hard, he goes hard, everything's extreme, doesn't have a pro card next to his name yet, but at the same time, he's earned his spot and he's earned his respect in the industry because of how he goes about carrying himself as a bodybuilder. So I just wanted to highlight that because that's a really good perspective that I think a lot of younger bodybuilders coming into the game could really tap into and use, because a lot of these guys are talking pro card talk when they're 2 years into it. And it's like you have 4 to 5 more before you're even on that level of the mountain to even make that climb.
Yeah, and I think one of the people who really shaped my perspective around that is Hunter Labrada. And like his approach, he always talks about like you're not going to last in this game if you're just chasing a pro card. Like your main aim should be building a pro physique, and then let that speak for itself. And then going back to like what you said, it's like, hey, it takes 4 or 5 years, especially because like I'm trying to do bodybuilding, like men's open bodybuilding. So it's like
10 years.
That's going to take at least a decade.
Yeah.
Yep.
So stamina is probably one of the most important traits that you can have from the mental performance side of things. It's like, yeah, anybody can go in there and have a good leg day. Anybody can go in there and have a good week or a good month or a good prep, especially when you're thinking about like the pressure of, man, I'm getting on stage, right? But can you nail 5 off seasons in a row? Can you nail 7 off seasons in a row? And the preps that are involved. It's like that's when you find out if you're really built for it long term.
Hey man, you guys are fucking spitting some knowledge. Tommy, what you said was the first thing that I picked up on as well when he said like what makes him tick in terms of wanting to be remembered for the training. It was that, man, like that alone will get you further than if any other answer you would have given. Like if it was like what makes you tick, like I want to have huge legs, I want to have a shot to win a pro card. Any of these other things, any other answer you could have given is results driven. The answer that you gave is process driven. And so that's another way of framing Tommy, highlighting what a great answer it was, because there's so many people that come to you and that is their end goal. It's a specific destination or result. And it's like, man, you have no idea the process that this is going to take. It's like, yeah, I want to end up at the peak of Mount Everest. It's like, what? Do you have any fucking clue what it's going to take to get there and how long it's going to take? Like, and what you're going to have to give up to get there? So the training thing, and it just, same thing, Tommy, like it resonated with me too. Cause that was the first thing that I had as like a switch to turn that I can remember thinking about was going to the gym for legs with like a group of my college roommates. And like the night before hearing them in like off in one of the other rooms where they're like the one guy's like hadn't come yet for a couple leg days. And they're like, yeah, so what's perch like? And one of my roommates was like, dude, I'll tell you what, I'm not going tomorrow because he's fucking insane. And it was like, I was like, oh, okay. Like it was like immediate feedback where I'm like, you know what? Like fucking right. Like this is what I'm going to have people remember me by and what people are going to mention me. It wasn't even that I wanted big legs. It was just like, I wanted to bury these guys so that they knew that I could endure more than them. And then I was willing to take whatever they had and kept coming back. So, yeah, man, that answer alone, I think should tell everybody that's listening everything they need to know about you and training with Kyrie and what those sessions are like. Man, so where are we at with your personal journey here? What's the idea? Are you off season right now? You have any sights on a prep?
Yeah, I actually just started prep on Saturday. So just under 24 weeks out now. So 23 weeks and what, 3 days, something like that, 4 days.
Yeah, but who's counting?
Yeah. I mean, at this point, it's really nothing has changed. It's like, it's the exact thing. Literally nothing has changed. The only thing that's changed in my plan is Justin pulled out my 2 high days. It's just like, we want to get the ball rolling. It's like, otherwise just keep executing the plan as usual. Keep doing your cardio 6 days a week, keep training hard, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, I'm doing the Texas State. Me and Kyrie are both doing that show together, actually. So we're both 20.
Very cool. I thought, man, when you said that, I thought he just posted today, and I'm like, man, that I knew that was lining up. So that's gonna be sick, man. That's really cool.
Yeah, so I'm really excited for that.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm really hoping that because right now he's working like night shift.
Yeah.
And so the only day our schedule lines up is for those Thursday leg days. So when he was doing his prep for the Texas State last year, he was on day shift. And so we were training together 5 days a week. back when he was prepping for the last year's Texas State when he went up against Urs. And so that was really cool. So it's like when he was going through that prep, it was that same mentality of like, I'm trying to get this guy to the Olympia stage. Like I'm in my full blown off season right now. Like I'm building, but those sessions were, I'm gonna make sure that you come in on show day and like you're not gonna be able to look back at any of these training sessions and be like, oh, I could have given a little more. Oh, if I would have done this, we would have been better. Now it's like it's full send. Like even though I'm in an off season setting and so now that we're both on prep, hopefully his schedule is going to be changing here in the next few weeks, and we'll be able to start training together consistently. So that should be pretty cool. But yeah,
Very cool.
This is gonna be my first NPC show, which I'm really excited for, and we'll see how things go.
So I'm going to take
it
you'd ventured to the dark side then, because you mentioned a couple times it's an NPC show. Wink, wink. I'll leave it at that, though. I know you're a professional. I'll leave it at that. No, but that's great, man. And I think too, like, you mentioned last year, like you being in full blown off season when you were training with Kyrie. I think there's a huge benefit for him in that scenario as you guys went through it, because, obviously you're at full force, almost kind of pushing him along. And yes, he's like the pro. He's the guy that's like going to get all the accolades, but then also for you, there's a level of drive because it's like, man, like this guy's dieting his face off right now. Like I'm full blown. Like I better be crushing this dude in the gym, like numbers wise. So that type of almost like friendly-ish competitive nature in the gym, I think is awesome. And then it'll be cool because it's a different dynamic than this year for you too. Where there's no excuse on either end. Like you guys are both going through the suck at the same schedule at the same time. There's not like, I'm sure that there was points, not that you're letting him off easy, but I'm sure at certain points last year, you have moments of understanding where you're like, man, this guy's 4 weeks out and like super low body fat, super low food. Like, he's not going to push the same numbers that I'm pushing, of course. Whereas this time around, there's none of that. Like you guys are in the thick of it at the same schedule. So, you just got to bring it out of each other. So that's very cool, man. I'm excited for both of you. It's cool that we got the inside scoop here that, you made that official announcement here on a Thinking Man's podcast.
Yeah. And that's kind of the beauty of training with him as well, is that for me, like I said, it's like training wise, like that's like, I take a lot of pride in that. And so one of like the cue phrases that I have for myself. So sometimes like I'll go first in our training. I'll hit my top set first, and sometimes he'll go first. Really just kind of depends on the day and who starts warming up first. But like especially on those days when he's going and hitting that top set first, and then I'm up after him, and I'm trying to chase his numbers. And so it's like when we've talked about like cue words and cue phrases, like one of my phrases is close the gap. Like I'm trying to close that gap to him. And so it's like when I'm in, like even when I'm in my set and it's just like, fuck, he got 17 reps on this adductor, I'm at 12 and it's starting to burn and I don't know if I'm going to get these next 5. It's like, no, you got to close the gap. Right. And so that's been a lot of fun. He's probably going to hate me for telling this story, but I'm going to tell it anyways. When you guys did your guys' podcast together, it came out on a Wednesday. And so I went to go do my grocery shopping at Costco. Wednesday is my normal meal prep day. And I was listening to your guys' podcast with Kyrie. And there was that moment in the podcast where he was like, there are 3 movements that Gabe beats me at consistently. It's the like RDL or stiff leg, adductors, and the seated hand curls. And he was like, those are the only 3 movements he beats me at. And I fucking hate it. He's like, it drives me crazy when he beats me at it every single time. I clipped that. I probably watched it like 20 times that night. I went in that next leg day and we do 6 movements. So we go adductors, lying hams, usually some sort of squat movement. It's some weeks we have like an A and B day. So some weeks it's like the belt squat, other weeks it's a hack squat, and then we go seated hams. And then we do either leg press or hip press, and then leg extensions. And for whatever reason, it ended up being this week that we started. So we go adductors. The lying ham curl was busy, and so we'd ended up doing the seated ham curls next. And so I beat him on those first 2 movements. And after the second movement, And this is one of those days where I was just pissed off. Like I watched that video again, like right before we went into training, and I was like, I need to beat him at something else.
Yeah.
I went in, I beat him on those two, which are the ones I normally beat him at. And I look at him, I take my headphone off and I go, hey, it's 2-0 good guys. And he looked at me, he's like, what the fuck are you talking about? And I was like, it's 2-0 good guys. He was like, I don't get it. I was like, I beat you on adductors and I beat you on the seated hams. 2-0 good guys. He was like, oh, okay, you want to play that game? Right. And then so we go over to the belt squat and we load up the first plate and like we go through our warm, we go through the second plate, third plate, fourth plate, fifth plate. And I normally would tap out at like 6 plates for like somewhere between like 12 and 15 reps. And so we load up the 6th plate and he does his warm-up set. And I was like, hey, your legs are looking a little shaky today. And he was just like, should have let a sleeping dog lie.
Mm.
And so we load up the 7th plate. And I was just like, oh, fuck. So we do the warm-up. And I was like, you sure you want to load up that 8th one? And he was like, he just looks at me and kind of laughs. He starts loading up the 8th plate. And he goes first. And for whatever reason, like he did it more in like a sissy squat stance. So he was like really close. So we only got like 6 reps. And so he got off and I was in my head, I was just like, oh my God, I'm going to beat him.
Yeah.
So I ended up getting, I ended up getting 8 reps with the 8 plates. And so that was the first time I had ever beat him on any sort of like squat movement. And so I was like 3-0. And then we ended up going to like the lion hams. He beats me on those. And then the hip press, he beats me on that. And then I ended up beating him on the leg extensions. Okay. At that point, now it's just full rage at this point. I was like, I have to beat him.
Just empty the clip at that point. Yeah.
And so I ended up getting like one more rep than him on our top set and our back off set. And afterwards, I was like, I beat you 4-2.
You should have told him to let a sleeping dog lie, because everything he said on that podcast just got turned against him.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And so awesome. I wrote that in my little logbook at the very bottom, a little note. I was like, beat Kyrie 4-2. And so I let him have it every week. And we trained last week and he kicked my ass. Like he put like 8 plates on there, did it like a normal squat instead of more like a sissy squat. And I think he got like 15 reps or something, just blew me out of the water. And I was like, God, get him.
Next week, got to close the gap then. That's all that is.
Tomorrow.
There you go.
All right, man. This has been awesome. Tommy, anything you want to close with?
Yeah, Gabe, to wrap up, just because I think it would help me and Joe for sure, but one piece of wisdom you can give bodybuilders in today's social media era of silencing the noise around them towards their own journeys.
Man, this is probably going to seem very biased because I love Dorian Yates so much. Like Dorian Yates, JP, and they were both, obviously Dorian didn't have social media back in the day. JP doesn't really care about social media. Like he's just going to do whatever the hell he wants to do anyways. I talked to Kyrie about this already too. I told him, I was like, I'm probably going to delete my Instagram app off my phone while I'm going through prep. Just because I don't want the distraction. Now, luckily I have the luxury to do so where it's like, I don't have any business tied to my Instagram and like sponsors or anything like that. But really just comes down to pointing that attention where you need it to be. Like especially when you're in a prep setting, like energy is such a finite resource. And so understanding where you're directing that energy to is going to be very important, and knowing when to redirect it on stuff that actually matters. Like if you're sitting there and you see like your show list comes out and you're looking up all the names and you're looking through all their Instagrams, and now you're thinking like, oh, like this guy comes in, he's super bubbly, or this guy is known for his condition. Like, how am I going to beat these guys? It's like, you're not doing yourself any favors. Like your main goal needs to be put your best package on stage. Rick Rubin has a really good quote. He was on some podcast and he was like, the artist's job is not to like make music for critics. He's like, the artist's job is to put out the best possible version, and then whatever happens, right? So it's the main goal needs to be on the work itself, not what results come from the work.
That's great advice. I saw him, it might have been in the same interview. He talked about like same sentiment. Like the idea should not be that you're putting something out for other people to like it. It's like, I liked this so much that I'm willing to put it out. Exactly. Like I'm so proud of this that I'm willing to share this with other people. So I think that's an awesome piece of advice to carry over into bodybuilding, because it's the same thing. Like, we've heard so many different bodybuilders talk about, like Dorian being one of them, where he's like, he didn't like to show it until it was done because it was like a work of art, or it wasn't a finished product. But then at the end, it was like, this is something I'm damn proud to show. And, it turns out it was the best. So yeah, that's a great piece of advice, man. And we appreciate all the insight. Um, you mentioned that you're, probably not going to be on social media. I was going to see, is this something, do you do anything on the personal side? Do you just have, like I want to call it more so like a corporate job, or do you do any like one-on-one? Like, can someone, let's say an aspiring bodybuilder hears this, can they hire you to speak with you one-on-one? Is that something you offer?
Yeah, definitely. I've actually got a competitor right now. I mean, you guys probably know him. I'm not going to say his name publicly. Like,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
can put this off air. But I've got a competitor right now who's getting ready to go to nationals, and we've been working together every week. I actually have a call with him in 45 minutes. He checks in with me
Oh,
every
cool.
week, and we talk about, all the different mental performance skills that are essential to him coming in and having the performance he needs on show day. So for him in the past, it's been, he gets really anxious the night before the show and the morning of prejudging. And so it's like working through, how are you regulating your own emotions? How are you regulating your own thoughts? Because the last thing we need is you stressed out the night before the show, you go to bed, cortisol spikes, or maybe you don't even get enough
You
sleep.
don't sleep at all. Yeah.
And cortisol
Game over.
spikes, you end up holding a bunch of water, and then you don't end up with the look you need. So it's like, we're talking about different types of skills to redirect those thoughts, reframe those thoughts, change your perspective, focusing on what's task focused right now rather than thinking about, am I going to win my pro card, right? Things like visualization. He's big, obviously, on like posing. Obviously, we know how important posing is. It's like, how are you visualizing what your posing routine is going to look like, and then practicing that effectively? Are you also visualizing the fact that you're going to be in probably a massive arena with hundreds of eyes, probably thousands of eyes at the national level that are all
Yeah.
looking at you? And you're going to be sitting there. People are going to be bumping elbows with you. You're going to be feeling the heat from the lights that are coming down. You're probably going to be sweating. You're be breathing heavy in those moments of high stress when you're up there, and you're thinking to yourself, like, oh, like, are the judges looking at me? Why haven't I gotten moved to the center yet? It's like, those are all important details to work out. So yeah, if anybody is interested in that, feel free to reach out to me on Instagram. Yeah, we can work together.
Awesome. Yeah, I was hoping you were going to say yes. I was like, man, this guy's withholding a valuable resource if he says no here. So we will link Gabe's information below in the description. Tommy, any closing thoughts or anything you want to finish with?
No, man, I could go on this for hours, and I definitely want to
Yeah.
get you back on
Yeah.
when your prep's over to see where your mind is then after 24 weeks from now of going through prepping with Kyrie. I just think you're going to have tons of things you took away from that. So that'll be cool to have an episode on.
Yeah. Tons
I
of
definitely
insight.
want to pick your guys' brains too on, like, because I know you guys both coach as well. So I want to hear more on like the psychological side of how you manage your athletes and certain skills that you use. Because I know coaching is, you got to use a fine-tooth comb sometimes. Sometimes you got to use the hammer. And it's when you're making those decisions and how you manage all these different types of personalities from all the different athletes on your rosters and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it'll be a good follow-up episode, man. We appreciate you coming on. We appreciate all the insight. This was super interesting. This was one that Tommy and I both immediately agreed upon when the idea came up. Like, man, this would be a killer episode. So safe to say you delivered, man. This was awesome, and we'd love to have you back, especially at the end of your prep. So yeah, for Gabe Rocha, for Tommy Styles, I'm Joseph PIRCHER. This was a Thinking Man's podcast. And until next time, guys, we are out.